Thank you very much. Back in the hot seat again. Right. Wildlife crime. As Dominic says, we've got a fairly short order here. So I was going to start by getting the speakers to introduce themselves. Starting on my left.
Yeah. Oh,
You're Charlie Moore.
I'm Charlie Moores with an S, but don't let that worry you. I'm the chair of Birders Against Wildlife Crime. I had a long speech here.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all right. I said introduce yourself, and I thought, no, there's a pregnant pause there. Never mind. Charlie Moores. Right, and Tom Quinn.
Yes, Tom Quinn, Director of Campaigns at the League Against Cruel Sports.
And sorry,
I'm Lee Bainbridge.
Bainbridge, that's it. Got it.
I'm a wildlife crime officer with the local force for this area, Avon, Somerset Constabulary, and my area of responsibility is where we are now, so I'm in good hands right at this moment.
Pauline Kidner, founder of Secret World Wildlife Rescue, rehabilitation of wildlife for specific badges.
Right, well, starting on my left then, we'll go back to the beginning. Could you introduce, what you want to say fairly briefly? We'll do it 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to open it up to
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Like I said, my name's Charlie Moores. I'm chair of Birders Against Wildlife Crime, which I assume most of you won't know about. I'm also a trustee of the League Against Cruel Sports, but I am today speaking as a birder, and I'm going to keep this really short. Most of my emails are longer than what I'm going to be saying now, but I thought I'd go on a slightly different track, because this is an educated audience. We all know what a wildlife crime is, especially crimes against badgers. I thought I'd like to just say briefly why a birder like me wanted to be here today, and hopefully that'll contribute to the debate that we're going to have. And there are 3 reasons. I don't normally talk this fast, but I will get through this. First off, I'm a birder who hates wildlife crime. When I was learning about conservation and animal welfare, I was getting into debates and kind of trying to work out what I actually thought. One thing I kept being told, especially by opponents, was that I was too emotional, that I needed to step back, remove the emotion before commenting. Somehow if my heart was involved, then my brain wouldn't be. So I shouldn't say things like I hate wildlife crime. Well, excuse my language, screw that, because I do hate wildlife crime. I don't prioritise birds over badgers or over anything else, because all wildlife crime appalls me. And it affects me on an emotional level. I engage on an emotional level. And wildlife crime makes me very angry, because it's about abuse. It's about pain and suffering and cruelty. It's about disrespect. It's about sticking 2 fingers up to the law, to animals, and to the people who care about them. And why would we not get emotional about that? The second reason I wanted to be here is I really admire the work Badger Trust does and the energy and passion it does it with. You guys clearly love badgers. You're in touch with your emotions. And I've said many times that when we set up Birders Against Wildlife Crime, we modelled it to a large extent on what organisations like Badger Trust, all the incredible badger groups, were already doing, getting people out in the field looking for wildlife crime. We birders weren't really doing that. There are obviously some fantastic raptor workers who are out there all the time, but despite the RSPB and their excellent work on wildlife crime, few birders that I knew and that my colleagues knew were involved in tackling wildlife crime. I certainly wasn't, and I've wondered about why a lot lately. I think it's partly to do with information on tackling wildlife crime not being nearly widely available enough. That's something we focus on at Birders Against, of course, and partly, and this links back to that emotional involvement, because I think that the organisations birders belong to have traditionally been rooted in science, debates about taxonomy, populations, identification. Even though we all say we love birds, we don't actually seem to show it very often. Speaking as a birder and speaking personally, when it comes to fighting wildlife crime, I think that our mistake has been to listen to our opponents. Opponents, remember, who are so disconnected from their own emotions that when it comes to wildlife, they can trap it, set dogs on it, and shoot it illegally without batting an eyelid. We've taken the emotion out of that fight, and we birders have come across as very dry, obsessed with lists, photographing rarities, splits and lumps, and that is no way to begin a dialogue with a huge number of people in this country who've never even thought about whether they care about wildlife crime or not. And I think we as birders have only really just started to connect with the people like yourselves that clearly do care, and that's been a mistake. So that third reason I wanted to be here, we can't fight wildlife crime on our own. None of us can. We need to connect, birders and mammal folk. So with a nod to the general election, I've coined a phrase, especially for today: fur and feathers, we're stronger together. Thank you.
Is anybody going to use PowerPoint?
No, not me. Anyone?
I'll cut it out then.
Hell no was one of the replies. No, you can turn it off. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, I'll hand over now to Tom from
Thank
League Against Cruel Sport.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. So yeah, reducing wildlife crime is a massive priority for the League. So we have a large number of investigators out in the field every day, compiling evidence for prosecutions. We have a dedicated intelligence team that use online methods, but also we have a dedicated wildlife crime watch number that people can call into. So we're compiling intelligence all the time. Over the last year, we had over 1,300 intelligence logs with over 2,000 specific pieces of intelligence that we glean from those. And this can inform our work on the ground, but also we disseminate information to the National Wildlife Crime Unit, to the RSPCA and the RSPB, so that criminals can be brought to justice. As you'd expect, most of the intelligence that we have is related to fox hunting, so about 70%, but a decent number, about 5%, relates to badger persecution. We're part of the Partnership Against Wildlife Crime Badger Persecution Delivery Group, and so from the beginning of 2014 to today, we've submitted 77 intelligence logs to the National Wildlife Crime Unit. More than half, about 60% of those relate to blocking up a set, interfering with badger set, 10% to badger baiting, and the remainder to poisoning, shooting, snaring, gassing, all nasty stuff. Just under half of those relate specifically to a hunt, across 18 hunts in total. This isn't unique to one hunt, unfortunately. Over half of those hunts are in the West Country, but that's primarily just because that's where we focus our attentions rather than that's where the worst hunts are. The worst hunts are everywhere, unfortunately. But yeah, unfortunately, badger persecution relating to hunting is widespread. The digging out of sets, the blocking up of sets prior to hunts. This isn't a fair sport. And we're now seeing the increased promotion of these activities on social media, which is very concerning. Mark Jones mentioned perhaps impact on persecution relating to the cull. We have received a small number of cull-related intelligence reports, and those reports have suggested that illegitimate acts of cruelty towards badgers may have been normalised, unfortunately, by the cull. So we're seeing Facebook postings, other social media postings where people are discussing culling methods, and then that quickly moves on to discussing other forms of cruelty. There have also been a number of reports that we've seen that the police have noted of badger culling outside of the designated cull zone, so Cornwall, Pembrokeshire and others. So it, unfortunately, is a phenomenon. The National Wildlife Crime Strategic Assessment from 2013 found that the intelligence they had suggested that badger persecution increased year on year by 36%. Now it's difficult to know, of course, whether that's actually increased persecution, perhaps because of the cull, or just because everyone's out there and we're able to report intelligence more. So we don't want to draw too many conclusions, but certainly the intelligence of persecution is up, unfortunately. So badger persecution now relates to about 9% of all intelligence that the National Wildlife Crime Unit have. Unfortunately, overall though, badger data collection is underfunded and it's uncoordinated, often reliant on enthusiasm of local groups, local wildlife crime officers, and we don't therefore have a national picture of badger persecution or a comprehensive picture. So at the League, we're very interested in working with local groups, with all of you where we can, sharing intelligence, and therefore hopefully providing us with some operational opportunities to actually go in, get the evidence, and bring prosecutions. Because despite the fact that terrier men are becoming wise to our surveillance, they're increasingly hiding their identity, which obviously means it's very hard to then prosecute. We are still getting prosecutions. So In February this year, we had a terrierman from the Middleton hunt. We managed to convict, given a large number of hours of community service fines and costs. We've got 2 more going to police in Leicestershire, 1 in Shropshire, another in the pipeline. So, you know, work is ongoing. With your help, we can make sure we put more of these guys, you know, make them pay for their activities.
Don't they go back to it? Sorry to interrupt.
Not always, not always. So, you know, we think prosecutions are very important, convictions are very important, because it shows that society doesn't accept this kind of
I'm not
behaviour.
opening it to debate yet, so you will have plenty of time afterwards. I want to let all the speakers speak first, and then I'm sure you'll have your hand up very quickly as soon as we've got to that bit.
Yeah,
Are you-
that was me. That was
Okay.
me.
All right. Now we're going to have Lee from the police.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me today. I was just saying to somebody earlier on, generally when I speak to groups this size, I'm teaching them the Green Cross Code. Singing a really, really great song that we developed about not talking to strangers, so I'm going to spare you all of that today. Sorry. My role is as a police wildlife crime officer, and I think it's a role that is becoming more and more important in today's circumstances. We're getting better reporting of wildlife crime. And just to tell you a little bit about myself, I've been in the police for 23 years. I haven't prepared anything today, it would probably show drastically. I've been in the police for 23 years, all sorts of things, city centre policing in Bristol, that was an eye-opener. I've done rural policing. I moved out to Chipping-Sodbury Police Station in about 1995. I've done policing, roads policing, traffic unit, those dreaded people that come up behind you on the M4 and the M5. I have done investigative work. I have then moved to Thornbury Police Station, and I've just come full circle again and gone back to Chipping-Sodbury this Monday. I've been a wildlife crime officer since 2009, and it's a role I've always been interested in, and it was a very coveted role. We used to have 1 wildlife crime officer per district in our force area when we had about 6 districts at the time. And I first met our wildlife crime officer on my district when I was very young in service, and it was a policeman that was very, very long in service to me, because I had a couple of years in at the time. He looked like a badly made bed, and he was about the same size as well, and very, very appropriately given today's audience, he looked like somebody had taken a badger and glued it to his face. It was very hot fuzz. It was the great big bushy beard, and I remember being introduced to this unmade bed, and I'm told, "This is Dick. He does the wildlife crime." And I can remember thinking, right, okay. And then Dick told me what wildlife crime was, and I was fascinated. I was absolutely fascinated. I'd come from city centre policing, and I can't even begin to tell you the sort of things you deal with down there, but wildlife crime was very far from it. I know now that wildlife crime is actually quite a big thing in city centres with brown sites and things like that. But as far as I knew then, it was just something for the countryside, and it was to do with magpies in traps, and that's okay, and you're allowed to do this on this day, but when it's that month, you can't shoot that. And it was just, wow, it was a minefield. And I decided that I really wanted to get into this. So 2009, a job opportunity came up, of course, just to be the local wildlife crime officer. So I applied for it and I got it. That is in addition to my normal role. I work part-time anyway. I don't do the full 40-hour week because of my personal circumstances. So my job is part-time. I'm responsible for a rural beat, a very, very large rural beat which goes up to the Gloucestershire border. And I supervise 2 special constables and 2 PCSOs, which help me in that role. My wildlife crime is in addition to that. So please bear with your local wildlife crime officers, because the chances are that their wildlife crime role is not their role. It's something that they've chosen to do because it's probably something they care about or they have a special interest in. That gives us very little time, and certainly in today's climate, the demands placed on the police service, calls for service are going up constantly, and sometimes we have less resources to do what we had more to do in the past, shall we say. So that's my story. Wildlife crime in the police, it's, in my experience, been one of those things where you phone police, somebody in a control room answers, or in a call handling centre, and you say, there's a man cutting down a tree, and I happen to know that there's some blackbirds' nests in it, and it's nesting season, and you know, I don't think it should be going on. And I'm watching him out the window, and I can actually see he's pulling out the birds. And oh no, the parents are coming back, and he's throwing the nest on the floor. And historically, the control room will say, yeah, okay, well, beat manager's back in a week. We'll send it through to them, and we'll let them know.
Yeah.
We know that goes on. It's getting better. It's moving forward. I can only assure you of that. Since I have been a wildlife crime officer, we have had more wildlife crime officers recruited even in Somerset. They're all part-time. One in particular, Sergeant Andy Weissel, who's our force lead, is really taking it forward. Every single one of our call handlers, and this is a very recent thing, and every single one of our control room operators has been trained in wildlife crime. They have, at the click of a mouse, their database in front of them. When they answer those calls, they have some preset questions, depending on what it is. If it's badgers, they know to ask, is the set occupied? What's happening? What can you see? If it's anything to do with wildlife crime, they have some clues. They have the legislation in front of them, and it's really important because when you're an organisation that's dealing with all sorts of things going on, and these call handlers are taking all sorts of calls, very, very few people know about wildlife crime. And so it's important that they have that training. We haven't been good in the past, we're getting better. We're going in the right direction, whether we're going fast enough, but we are going in the right direction.
Thank you, Lee. I'm sure now, obviously, many people know Pauline.
Hi, I'm Pauline from Secret World Wildlife Rescue, and I think really the cull, particularly in Somerset and Gloucestershire, has meant that it's open season as far as badgers are concerned. Certainly once the culls start, we get reports, not to us, but just to the Somerset Badger Group, of shooting that's taking place where the cull isn't actually licensed. We see more badgers coming in that are shot, that have snares, that are being poisoned. There's been a complete increase in the last year or so. And it's quite interesting that most of the wildlife centres around the country are getting a lot less badgers and badger cubs in than they have ever done before. I know Folly would normally have anything up to 12, and last year they had 2. And our numbers are decreasing completely as well. We had 27 last year, whereas we would normally be anything between 50 and 60. Not that we want that many, but I'm just saying that this is the general thing that is happening out there. And it's worrying from other points of view as well. Certainly the shooting is going on, and last year poor Adrian got caught up with 4 badgers that were pulled out of a river that had been there quite some considerable time. And the policeman brought them to us, and we decided not to open the bags but just to have them x-rayed, and all 4 of them have been shot close to the head. So all 4 of those must have been in traps, and we know that badger traps, box traps are being sold, and people are resolving their own problems because they hear about the trapping going on and they think that anybody can do it. Snares, I know Dominic is going to take on, which I think is absolutely fantastic. Every time I see a snare around an animal, I wonder why on earth do we still sell these things? Why do we sell a snare that can be set legally or illegally? If we have to sell snares, then they should only be sold so that you can set them as free-running snares. But to be perfectly honest, we shouldn't be selling snares anyway. The veterinary profession doesn't particularly value wildlife, and certainly our consult vet, Liz Molyneux, is doing an awful lot towards that, and we're hoping to do CPD courses to promote, so that veterinary can actually see the evidence of some animals coming in that has been caused by wildlife crime, and we need to be better with our reporting, and we're just as guilty as a lot of other people. You know, we should make sure that we report these items to Mealy's or the Badger Trust so that they don't go unnoticed, because until we start recording crime, we're never going to really know the true amount of crime that goes on out there. One of the biggest problems I think we have, and I think, you know, the fact that there's three different lots of cruelty going on. One is through ignorance, one is because it's willful and they enjoy doing it, and the other is that people don't really care anyway. And the only way that we're going to get anywhere is by educating children. I believe they're becoming desensitized with the computers that they have. They switch them on, they shoot things, they knock them out, and they know that when they switch the machine off and they open it again, they're there again. They really are being desensitized as far as what killing and pain is being caused. And that's really where we've got to start. We've got to start with the youth, we've got to start being more aware of that, trying to get into schools, but obviously it's important that we get to the general public as well.
Thank you very much.